you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk facts.
We're giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
Play it on the car ride, play it when you lounge. X and O, you know that we can hold it down. Shout out to my man Sammy, got it off the ground. And to all the listeners tuned in right now, got debates, analysis, and speculation. This is sports talk for the new generation. You know where to find us, got a reputation. Sick podcast, your #1 sports destination.
Giving all our devotion, riding high on this wave of emotion. Going all out, yeah, cause this is our time. No, ain't no stopping us till we reach the finish line. All in, we came here to win. We're gonna give everything. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick. On fire, we're ready to fight. We'll bring the house down tonight. S-I-C-K on the run. S-I-C-K, sick, sick.
S-I-C-K is the sickest podcast. Tune in for the audio, or you can even watch back. Giving players all the props or put them on blast. We don't give no hot takes, only talk back. S-I-C-K,
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 S-I-C-K.
S-I-C-K.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. With Tony Marinaro.
55 seconds left in the penalty, a minute and 27 seconds left in regulation time. Boston 4, Montreal 3. Lafleur coming out rather gingerly on the right side. He gives it into Lemaire, back to Lafleur.
The sickest Montreal Canadiens podcast.
You're in the ball!
Sports entertainment like no other.
Rejoint, on lui fait perdre la rondelle, une passe devant. Et c'est le dégagement, et ce sera la victoire des Canadiens. Stanley pour les Canadiens, le 23e de l'histoire.
You found the dogs! John, you found the dogs! He found the dogs! And all together, they worked a young team to the top. And now, a 24th Stanley Cup banner will hang from the rafters of the famous Forum in Montreal. The Canadiens win the Stanley Cup.
Brought to you by Energy Transportation Group. Driven to be different. La Vida Tibi. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination. It's gonna be sick.
Marinaro on this Monday, January 27. I hope everyone is well. And yes, we are live on the Sick Podcast. We are live to talk Montreal Canadiens hockey, and we're going to do so with Eric Engels of Sportsnet and sportsnet.ca, and we're going to do it in just a couple of minutes. Not before I talk to you about all of our sponsors, one of which, of course, is Bittt at Tibi right behind me. They launched their new Ultra Lager. It's a refreshing, thirst-quenching beer, perfect for chilly winter days. Only 90 calories, 2 grams of carbs, 4% ABV per can, available in a pack of 6 and 12 in grocery stores all around the province of Quebec. It's ultra light and it's ultra refreshing. Playground, giving away over $100,000 in cash prizes this January at their cash game poker tables every Monday through Thursday. Go and play anytime from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. or enjoy the late night games from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m. for a chance to win. Each period will have 12 winners for a total of 24 winners per promo day. Get in on the action at Playground. And also brought to you in part by Energy Transportation Group, a leading full-service logistics provider serving all of North America. They are driven to be different. If you're wondering what's going on in the National Hockey League and games that may concern the Montreal Canadiens, well, there's bad news tonight because teams that the Montreal Canadiens will possibly be battling for a wild card spot, the Philadelphia Flyers, were victorious tonight over the New Jersey Devils by a score of 4-2. The Detroit Red Wings were victorious tonight in a 5-2 win over the Los Angeles Kings. And the Pittsburgh Penguins will start in about 30 minutes' time as they play the San Jose Sharks. So if I take a look at the standings right now and take a look at where the Montreal Canadiens are in a wild card spot after losing their last 2 games, mind you, they were able to pick up a point on Saturday night because the loss was in overtime. I can tell you that the Boston Bruins hold on to the first wild card spot with 56 points. The Tampa Bay Lightning hold on to the second wild card spot with 55 points. The Lightning have 3 games in hand on the Bruins. Columbus also has 55. They have played 2 more games than the Lightning, 1 less game than the Bruins. And the Canadiens, who have 53, therefore 2 points out of a wild card spot. The Canadiens have played 1 more game than Tampa and 2 less than Boston. So put the Canadiens to be 3 points out of a wild card spot because they played more games than Tampa. So they wanted to be in the mix. They're in the mix. The big surprise today on this Monday, January 27, is who would have thought a month ago or 2 months ago that the Ottawa Senators would have been 3rd in the Atlantic, and that's exactly where the Senators are. The same amount of points as the Bruins, who hold the first wildcard spot, but the Senators have a game in hand. Without further ado, we bring in from Sportsnet, Eric Engels.
I was told there wouldn't be any math here tonight.
You know what? For whatever reason, I almost said Eric Wild. Did you catch that? It was Eric Engels, because I think one of the last times I was on, I had Brian Wild on. And
am I just blurry to me, or am I blurry to you too?
Oh, you're blurry to me too, I can tell you.
What'd you smoke?
I don't smoke. Never have.
I know. I'm just messing around. Okay.
You know what? Full disclosure. I never had a joint in my life.
Okay. I thought there was like a real story coming there.
But that is a real story. Isn't that something?
That is.
As a matter of fact, up until a couple of years ago, because I actually saw people doing it, I didn't even know what it looked like.
Tony, talk for 1 minute. I'm coming back because I can't.
This is what I do, Eric. I talk. Yeah, don't worry about it. Yeah,
I'm coming right back.
Yeah, either that or he wants to avoid the whole joint discussion. Maybe it's that too. Who knows? You're watching right now on YouTube Live, and thanks for doing so. And I'm taking a look at you on the chat right now. So welcome, everyone. Welcome, and thanks for being there. You're probably watching us right now on Facebook Live as well. Thank you for being on the Facebook Live. Thank you very much. And we have about 513 people watching us live now on YouTube. We have to get that number up to about at least 1,000 more than that, to about 1,500 by the time all is said and done here tonight. Eric is back. He's no longer blurry.
Nope.
What's going on?
I don't avoid any topics, by the way.
Oh, you know what? I didn't think you did. A little bit surprised by my commenter.
I mean, you grew up in Montreal.
Yes. Yeah.
You know.
So
did I.
Yeah.
So I don't have the same claim as you.
I grew up to a very strict father who I was like just absolutely scared of. So like I didn't. Okay. I'm not touching that. But
now it's so different, right?
But like today at age 52, I'm still scared of my father. All right. Okay.
Nowadays that you know it's legal.
I know. Yeah, I hear you.
There's a different stigma around it.
Hey,
I don't personally dabble. I have in my life. I grew up in Montreal, and as you know, my favorite band is the Grateful Dead. So, you know.
Yeah.
Those two things go together. But I don't know. I
had no idea that the show was going to start this way, by the way. And
well, it started with you doing a lot of math that you run this podcast 5 days a week. I don't think you want to go through the standings every day that way, because
you know what?
Considering how tight they are, it's
we probably should have prepared a graphic. It would have made it a lot easier. But Shane Gaumont says that if the money and yellow pays him, he's not doing extra work. So there you have it. So
listen, everybody's looking at the standings every single day, including the Canadiens, except for Marty St. Louis, who said he's looked at them, but he's not necessarily looking at them every day. And I don't know if I necessarily believe him, despite the fact that he's an extremely earnest guy who tells the truth about virtually everything. I think we're all looking at those standings pretty closely.
I'm going to show you a graphic that was brought up on
please do.
JC's show earlier this evening on TVA Sports that was prepared. So this graphic is courtesy of TVA Sports. Since the 18th of January, and I believe during that time the Canadiens have a record of 2-2-1, if I'm not mistaken, the Canadiens' goals against have been 21 goals against. That ranks them second last in the league. Scoring chances against are 184. That ranks them last in the league. Scoring chances in the high danger areas are 981. And that, by the way, that looks like a really high number. But anyway, we have to get to that. But high danger scoring chances, 981. Anyway, it looks like a really big number. Like, I mean,
yeah, I don't. It's such a strange sample to pull from, by the way. Like, since January, today is January 27th. It's
but it's not as. I understand why it's done, and that is in the last 4 or 5 games, the Canadiens who had done an amazing job for the 5 weeks prior to that. Weren't giving up a lot of shots anymore and weren't giving up a lot of scoring chances. And now it's a very small sample, like you just said. But, why the hiccup?
Does it include January 18th? Because, it's 5 games if it includes January 18th. And I don't know. I don't see it marked off in rates either. So some teams could have played 3 games since January 18th, some 5, some 6. Anyways, it's a bit all over the map, but the point is taken. We've seen their games slip, obviously, with the 7 straight goals against Toronto, with the trading chances against New York, and specifically the 3 games against Tampa Bay and Detroit and New Jersey, in which they talked quite a bit about not having their A game. And I think it's also been exhausted as a conversation that they are tired and they haven't had a chance to practice in 14 days. And these are not excuses for why the Canadiens haven't played their best in the last week. They're reasons. Sometimes there are reasons. Now, the fact that they picked up 3 points in 3 games, And if you want to go through that entire 5-game sample that was just presented on that board, that number would be it's 2. So I thought we weren't supposed to do math, but I'm going to do it anyways on the fly. That's 5 points in 5 games. And I would have told you that after their run, that 20-game run or so that put them in the position that they're in, that if they could float 500 from here to the Four Nations face-off break, which I think a lot of people would logically look at and say that's basically what they need to do. They need to be 500 between now and the Four Nations face-off break. Well, despite those numbers looking what they look like defensively, Canadians are 500 over those games.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's just
is it 2-2-1? Is it actually 2-2-1? Actually,
I believe so. Yeah,
not just 5 points. So, okay, we're done doing math, right?
Yes.
We both got into this business to avoid doing this much math.
Okay, you know what? Let's take a look at the last couple of games. They're giving up a lot of shots and a lot of scoring chances.
Yes.
Now, is it because they're tired?
Yes.
Is it because maybe
they haven't practiced? Yes.
Maybe a couple of guys have been hit with the flu, which is going around, by the way. It's been going around for about 3 or 4 weeks now. Could very well be all of that. It's just, trying to put everyone alert. Everyone's worried that they're going back to some bad habits that they had in the first month of the season.
You know what? I think the biggest factor in this is that combination of being tired and not practicing. Like last Wednesday was their first practice in 9 days. They had 5 people out of it, 6 if you want to include Emil Heinemann.
Yeah.
Marty St. Louis was asked about it afterwards, and he said it felt like a youth hockey practice, which he has good knowledge of considering how often he coached youth hockey before coming to the Canadiens. And it looked like one too. Like they couldn't run the type of drills that they would want to run to avoid slipping in certain categories. And I'm going to tell you something. The New Jersey game, I think if you look at the Detroit game, fatigue was the most obvious factor. I think when you look at the New Jersey game, you see the details, the fine details kind of slipping away. And those are things that, believe me, NHL teams practice too much in general. We've had coaches in Montreal over the last number of years that have run too many practices, and it's understandable with a team that's losing, but they have the data to know when to kind of pull back and haven't necessarily done it. And as a reporter, believe me, I love practice time because it enables me to talk to all kinds of people on the side. But sometimes it's a little too much even for me. But there is a factor here that when you only practice, today was their second practice in 15 days. That is where the details start to slip. And you look at the New Jersey game specifically, like they were getting crushed in the face-off circle when Suzuki pulled back a draw that Alex Carrier scored his first goal on. They were down 61% of the face-offs, okay?
Yeah.
Details. I ran into Mark Bureau, who was hired as Canadiens face-off specialist. And he was I ran into him on January 11th when the Canadiens were playing the Stars, and I wrote about this today, okay? He said then, there's been major improvements. If you look at certain categories all over the ice, there's been major improvements with certain guys. He said, we have a lot of discussions, but I haven't been able to get on the ice with them for a month. And I'm looking forward to it. And that was more than 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So it's not an excuse. It is a reason, though. And these are little details that make a big difference when the margins are as slim as they are in this league. And you look at the standings that you rattled off all that information on, what it should tell you more than anything, aside from the Canadiens losing a bit of footing by only going 500 in those 5 games, is how little margin for error there is and how close the teams actually are in terms of what they actually are. You may look at them on paper. I told you this at the beginning of the season. You may look at 20 of these teams on paper and think, well, these guys are better than these guys. But the difference is health, goaltending, and like voodoo. Like there's not that much of a difference between 20 of these teams. So that's what the Canadiens are facing.
Fair enough on everything, but look, Arpin wrote a real good article in The Athletic a couple of weeks ago, and he talked about the fact that Nick Suzuki is in on the discussions with the coaching staff as how the team feels, whether he thinks they need a practice, whether they should, take part in the morning skate. whether it's good to give the guys a day off or whatever, some time off. But so if we're going to say that that's a reason for their success when they're fresher in the third period over the other teams, for us to then say when things are not going well, it's because they don't practice.
I'm very happy you brought it up because it allows me the opportunity to clarify what I'm saying here. When you have 15 games straight where you are going to be so since December 26th, okay, since they came back from the Christmas holidays, went to practice in Florida and played on the 28th. So since that game in the 28th, they've had to travel for 13 of 15 games they've played.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
They went through every time zone. They had a bunch of back-to-backs. They had a bunch of 3 games in 4 nights. And they had to take the risk of Russ settling in without practicing to weaponize rest. That's fine. Totally understandable. But in the same vein, it was foreseeable that inevitably, as you start to get fatigued, no matter how much you've done to manage that schedule to give yourself the most rest, as you begin to get physically fatigued, mental fatigue starts to come into play, and certain details start to slip. Mental mistakes start to come. And you can circumvent that with a really strong collective game, and the Canadiens did that. I think they really did that coming back from that 5-game road trip to start this whole thing and beating Vancouver. I think they did it at different times in games against Dallas. But inevitably, it does catch up to you, and when it starts to slip, the thing that brings it back and keeps it from slipping further is practice. And right now, Marty St. Louis has talked about the value of their schedule, keeping them at home for at least this week before they fly off to California, and the fact that they have an opportunity to practice a little more than they have recently as a key to them avoiding slipping. And I think he's right. And I don't know if they're going to be at their A game against Winnipeg and Minnesota this week, but I think they're not going to be the team that's allowing the 31st most scoring chances from the slot over 5 games. Okay. I think they're going to find some middle ground.
Speaking of fatigue, Mike Matheson leads all Montreal Canadiens defensemen in ice time. I think it's about 15 seconds shy of about 25 minutes per game. Came off a game on Saturday night where he played 24-32. On this occasion, he was not the most utilized defenseman. For the Canadiens, it was Caden Gooley, who played 25 minutes and 11 seconds. Matheson did not have a great night at the office. It was not a very good game for him. He was a -2 for what it's worth. He was on the ice, every time the Devils score type of thing. But
3 goals. Yeah.
But, he's on the ice for the game-winning goal against, and he loses the puck to Meyer, who battles with him, and whether it should have been a penalty or not, it's probably another discussion for later. But, and Meyer is able to get the puck to Jack Hughes, who goes on a breakaway, makes no mistake, scores the game-winning goal. I talked about this earlier today on my radio show, Le Forum on BPM Sports, weekdays between 9:55 a.m. and 11:55 a.m., that it seems to me that Matheson, probably more so than any other Montreal Canadiens player, is probably the most polarizing in terms of the second that he has a bad game, makes a mistake, or people believe he makes a mistake, he takes abuse on social media. It's unbelievable. People make it sound like, and I'm not just going to say this to defend Mike Matheson, okay? I'm going to talk facts, okay? Mike Matheson, his ice time is an indication, whether people like it or not, that the Canadiens coaching staff believes that at this point in his career, compared to at this point in every other defenseman's career, that he should log the most ice time, and that's why he has the highest average. They put him on the power play, and he went from first wave to second wave a couple of months into the season. They put him on the penalty kill. They put him against other teams' best players at times, and at times it's the duo of Gooley and Carey. It depends where the Canadiens are playing, and it depends what the matchup will be. He had 62 points last year,
Try and find how many defensemen in the National Hockey League at 62 points. Not going to be a lot. He has been a great team player despite being knocked off the first wave of the power play. You don't hear any problem with that. He is sacrificing to play the opposite side of defense for him. He's playing right side defense. Everyone knows that he would be much better on his natural left side. He's playing with a rookie in the National Hockey League, and although we all love him, we realize he has some warts and defensively, and he has some learning to do. And Matheson is a reason why Lane Hudson has been as good as he is. I mean, I could go on and on and on. He is a proud Montreal Canadian. He is an extremely hard worker. He is low maintenance. His contract is great value. He wants to be here. The amount of people that shit on him for a mistake that wasn't his on Saturday to begin with, on the game-winning goal, for me, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, we could say that was definitely not a good pass from Patrick Laine, but that's, listen.
It starts there, though. It starts there. It's not a good
I agree
pass.
with everything you said, and I also think that there's I don't want to paint the fan base with the same brush, because I think most of the time the stuff that we see and hear comes from the people who speak the loudest. Not necessarily representative of the majority even. Just, the people who speak the loudest are the people you tend to see and hear. Look, I'm happy Mike Matheson is disengaged from social media, okay? I don't think he needs that. It's not going to make him a better defenseman. I think he understands that and probably did a few years ago, actually, having had conversations with him about it. It's something he's advised people like Lane Hudson about. One of the things I told you about Lane Hudson at the beginning of the year was, when this kid makes a mistake, you are going to see it on the highlight reels. Like, he and Matheson both have a level of risk that they need to play with to access the highest end of their potential and talent. And when that risk goes the other way, they wear it. I mean, they wear it with more than minuses. They wear it in terms of the way their play is interpreted. And the mistakes are glaring. When they make them, they're glaring. And that hurts. It hurts the reputation of the player from people who don't have a nuanced view of what the player does. They don't go through a laundry list like you just did in terms of assessing the value of the player. They see the glaring mistakes, and that's what the player becomes to them. It's a problem in the way we're hyperbolic about everything in society, or at least the people that we hear from the most have that kind of tendency. The people who speak the loudest, the unsilent minority. So listen, I'll say this about Matheson. He's had too many games this year where he is at the height of his abilities and at the bottom of them. And I would love to see him find the middle ground more often, because I'll tell you, there was a 5-game stint, and I spoke to him right before it. I was in Florida that first game after Christmas. And before that game started, the day before, the Canadiens had a practice. And I asked Mike Matheson, I said, Mike, how do you find that middle ground where you don't end up in a situation where you're great one night and really nowhere near your best the next? And he's a really stand-up guy for facing a question like that. And I asked it to him away from the scrum, because it's not the type of question I would ask someone in front of cameras. Okay.
Yeah.
And he turned to me and said, when I take care of defense first, everything else flows. When I get the stops that I'm supposed to get, if I have the chance to step up on a player, when I get a clean exit that I'm supposed to get, when I have a chance to exit cleanly, the rest happens organically. And I find I play my best, and I find I'm under control. And I tracked Mike Matheson's stops and zone exits for the next 3 games that I was on the road with the Canadiens, through Tampa, through Vegas, and that first game in Florida. And he was over 85% and 90% in both categories in all 3 games, and nobody talked about him. Mike Matheson was not featured in any article or talked about on any radio show, including yours, during that sequence of games and the 5-game road trip total, because the balance that he found between his risk taking, which brings out his talent, and his defending was right in the place where he wants it to be. And I think he will find that again, but it's got to come with that realization that when he tries to do too much is when it starts to get off the rails for him a little bit. You're right. The winning goal, he has his part in it. Is he the reason that it happened? I don't really think so. It's not a smart pass to be throwing across the ice. And if you're going to throw it, it's got to be precise enough that you don't put your teammate in that position with two Devils going downhill towards the Canadiens' net. So I think people have a hard time sitting back, thinking about it as rationally as you just put it forward and as I just tried to add to. So I don't know what people think.
Listen.
I'm not engaged on your chat right now. I don't see it in my window. I don't know what people think of that, but that's just what it is.
There's a bunch of comments coming in. And look, I'm not going to tell you that Mike Matheson doesn't have bad games. He clearly had one on Saturday night. I'm not going to tell you that he doesn't make mistakes. Well, he's a guy that likes to touch the puck. He's a guy that likes to possess the puck. He's a guy that likes to do things with the puck. He's a guy who plays a lot of minutes. And for the last several years, he's a guy who's been playing on a really bad team.
Who can play more right now, by the way? I was watching Saturday's game very closely. I watch all the games very closely. I'm not one of the writers that's up there. Like I will say this about my own style. I watch the entire game before a single word goes on the page. And sometimes that's to my own detriment because I have a deadline and it's hard to write something that's analytical and good within less than an hour, but I need to watch the entire game. And
I would do it the exact same way because in 2 or 3 minutes, one player or one team could change their entire outcome and their entire game.
And the story.
On that, correct. So I would do it the same way.
I was watching Mike Matheson's game closely against the Devils and thinking, okay, he doesn't have it. He's made a few mistakes here that unfortunately undo any of the good that's kind of happened from him in this game. I'm not saying it's a terrible game, but those mistakes were too glaring to be undone by some of the good. And I'm sitting there simultaneously thinking, what choice do the Canadiens have but to keep throwing him and Hudson over the boards? They don't have a choice. Their defensive depth, albeit strong organizationally, because they've got some young players that are developing and on their way and going to be pretty good players, it's just not there at the NHL level right now. It's Jack-Eye and Savard. I mean, Jack-Eye has really brought his game up a level.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that he can take on 20 minutes a game right now on a night where Matheson's not quite at his best. He can play 15, 16 and give you probably 15 really good minutes. But then you're exposing him to making the type of mistake that Mike avoids most of the time, but was making frequently on Saturday. Goulet and Carrier are seeing the toughest matchups night after night, playing a shutdown role and sacrificing, and they're being used almost equally if you take out special teams, a 5-on-5 specifically. So,
Eric, the Canadiens have some good defensemen.
Doing what they have to do. They're doing what they have to do.
They have some good defensemen, but for the case of most of them, less is probably more. Like, I would think that probably less minutes for Matheson, he'd be better. Less minutes for Jack-Eye, he'd be better. Lane Hudson, he's a guy that seems like he could play all the time. But once again, he's never played more than 40 games at any level. And so let's see what happens in the second half of the season. Goulet's probably a guy that if you up his minutes, he can actually play at the same level, maybe even take it an extra notch. But, man, Titani says on YouTube Live, he says, it's more like a dozen mistakes per game, not one. And he says it's like people don't watch the games. He said Mike Matheson is Jake Gardner.
What
people have Matheson's Jake Gardner.
People have tunnel. This is what I was talking about. People just have tunnel vision. All they see is mistakes. The game is a game of mistakes, people. That's the way the game works. Everybody makes them on the ice, including Caden Goulet, by the way, who has more. I don't know if he's credited with as many giveaways as Mike Matheson, but he doesn't move the puck as well. I mean, if you talk to Caden Goulet, he would never in a million years say to you, yeah, I move the puck as well as Mike Matheson or Lane Hudson. Like, no, not his strength. He's not bad at it. I like the fact that Caden Goulet rarely makes a soft play in his own zone. I love that. As an old school type guy who values that type of defenseman, I like that. But people only see what they want to see. They're locked in so far down the tunnel that they can't acknowledge the rest of it. So we've made our points on Matheson. We should probably move on.
Yeah, we will. Speaking of Gooley, Canadians put up a note on X earlier today about Gooley and Josh Anderson. They had a therapy day today, so they did not take part in practice. One guy who did is David Reinbacher, who wore a no-contact jersey but practiced with the team. Montembeault was awesome. Just over a week ago, about less than a week ago, last week on Tuesday versus Tampa. He was fantastic. He was named the second star of the game. I think he could have easily been named the first star of the game. It was a big team win, but I think it was a win signed Samuel Montembeault. Marty St. Louis decides to come back with him on Thursday night in Detroit. He makes a couple of saves on shots that maybe should have got in. There's a couple of shots that went in that he probably should have made the saves. The Canadians lay an egg in Detroit. Montembeault cannot steal that one. They lose by a score of 4-2. They come back with Dobish on Saturday night. He looks a little shaky and a little nervous in the first. He got better as the game went on, made some really big saves, but ultimately the Canadians lose in overtime in Dobish's last two starts, which both took place at the Bell Center. He was a little bit more shaky or nervous or looked a little bit more out of control than he did in the previous 5 starts. He's given up 8 goals in the last 2 games, but a lot of people think his performance last game was better than Montembeault's performance in the last game that he played. My question to you is, who would be your starter tomorrow night versus the Winnipeg Jets, and why?
Well, Montembeault. I don't see a market difference between those two performances, by the way, other than Dobish getting a point.
Got it. So
I
here's
think both of them made. What were the numbers? Both of them made 40 saves.
Yeah. So I got something interesting for you though here. Okay. Once again, it's not a big sample size, but it's over 550 votes. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
This was put up on X earlier today, and it all depends on who's voting. I get it. Habs on Reddit threw out the question: which Habs goalie should get the start tomorrow versus Winnipeg? Now it's probably a 24-hour vote or whatever it is. And I got this just before the show, but Dobis has 54% of the votes, or had 54% of the votes to start. Montembeault 46 after 557 votes. Are you at all surprised by that?
No. You ever hear of the term recency bias?
Yes.
You know what? In this town, when it comes to goalies or any other players wearing a Canadiens jersey, it's not what have you done for me lately, it's what are you doing for me right now, and why isn't it enough? I mean, I'm not surprised, and I'm not taking anything away from Jacob Dobish. He's been incredible. Like, what an incredible start to a career. It's like not normal what he has done so far, but you know, these are the same people that begged for Montembeault to be a starter after he had like 3 or 4 really good starts in a row 2 years ago. The same people that said a year prior that he should never play in the NHL again. The same people that asked for Primo to take over at one point. The same people that thought Jake Allen was a sieve. It never ends. It never ends. So like, I don't want this podcast to sound like I'm just shitting on Canadiens fans nonstop. But like I said, the ones that we hear from the most tend to be the loudest and the ones with the least nuanced opinions. And I just think this is another one of those cases. And listen, Dobish, if he keeps going the way he's going, he is going to continue to get more and more playing time. And he already has through, I think the plan has already changed a little bit for him to play a little bit more than he probably would have been scheduled had he not started the way he did to his career.
Yeah. So once again, for those who are unaware, between February 10th and February 21st, the Canadians will not be playing any games because it is the Four Nations tourney that will take place. Between now and then, the Canadians will play 7 games. They play tomorrow night in Montreal versus Winnipeg. They play Thursday night in Montreal versus Minnesota. In what may be, or you would think, Marc-Andre Fleury's last game versus the Canadiens. And then they go out west, where on February 2nd, which is a Sunday, they play in Anaheim. On the Tuesday, they play in San Jose. On the Wednesday, they play in Los Angeles, which leads you to believe that the goalies are going to split time there because they're not going to play the same goalie 3 games in 3.5 days or whatever it is.
Mhm.
And then on Super Bowl weekend, on the 8th and the 9th, they host New Jersey and they host Tampa. 2 games at 24 hours, both starting at 1 o'clock. And it would probably lead you to believe that there might be a split there too. So you're going with Montembeault tomorrow. I don't have a problem with it. Do you think they already have the starter for Thursday versus Minnesota penciled in, or it all depends on Montembeault's performance tomorrow night and what the final result will be of the hockey game?
Well, if you say penciled in, then it still does depend on what happens on Tuesday night, right? So I'm good with saying I think a starter is penciled in for Thursday. It's not written in pen yet. But if I think that Montembeault will play tomorrow. I think Dobish will play on Thursday.
Even if they write it with a pen, they can always use liquid paper,
I think they have incentive to go 50-50 on the starts between now and the break. I think they have incentive, and I think Jacob Dobish has helped give them that incentive, and I don't think it has anything to do with Montembeault's performance. I think it's just smart management to keep both guys as sharp as possible, knowing they have those back-to-back situations and knowing both of them are coming off losses. Like, just make sure both of them continue to give the Canadiens the best possible chance to win, and I think in pencil, they might have written it in already as a 50-50 proposition. There's an odd number of games, so one of them is going to start one more than the other, most likely.
Yeah.
But I think you try and go 50-50 up until a point where. So we'll see how it goes. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
If they go 3-3-1 over the next 7, is it mission accomplished? Do you think that puts them in a tough spot? Do you think that doesn't enable them to climb up a little bit? Or like, how do you see it? What's the goal here?
Well, listen, the goal is that between now and the end of the season, if they want to get into the playoffs, they have to play for 600 and something. 3-3-1 would not be 600 and something. Like if they have to play high 600s, it doesn't get to that.
I don't. It has to be 600. I don't think it has to be above 600.
Okay. They'll be in the mix. They'll be in the mix, right? So they're not going to be in a wild card spot, I don't think, if they play 3-3-1 in the next 7, but they're not going to be far out of it. They'll be in the mix.
So that's
like they are now.
That was more my question.
Yeah.
What is the key between now and then? Is it to remain in the mix or to put themselves in a playoff spot?
Well, in an ideal world, they want to be in a playoff spot, but
yes.
Their goal before the season started was to be in the mix. But
for a guy who asks questions for a living, that wasn't necessarily the best way to frame it. I guess my point is, in an ideal world, of course, they're sitting in a playoff spot come Four Nations break, okay? But I think it's mission accomplished if they're 3-3-1 over their next 7. I think they've put themselves in a good enough spot that they can take that rest and really re-energize and recharge for the push that they're going to need to make from now to the end of the season.
If by the time the Four Nations tourney starts, the Montreal Canadiens are 5 points out of a wild card spot, everyone would have taken that 2 months ago.
Everybody. Yeah, that would be tough. I mean, and I don't envision them being 5 points out of a wild card spot if they're 3-3-1 over the next 7. I don't see that happening. In fact, I think if they're 3-3-1 over the next 7, and maybe I'll be eating my words after those 7 games, they'll still be within striking distance of 3rd place in the division, which, if I remember correctly, based on your math, the Canadiens are 3 points behind the Senators with 1 game in hand.
Yes, the good thing about those games out west, obviously, are going to be the Canadiens are playing Western Conference teams, and if they're tight games and the other team picks up a point, that's not going to hurt the Canadiens. But you always have to hope when you're trying to make the playoffs that the teams that you're battling with, they don't end up giving points to the other teams as well, right? So those games where you end up winning in overtime and 2 teams that you're battling with, one ends up getting 2 and the other one ends up getting 1, those hurt. It's a Sick Podcast, brought to you in part by Accident Insurance Solutions. All insurance isn't created equal. You know where to find the right solution for you. It's Accident Insurance. Accident doesn't sell insurance. They shop it for you to find the right product, right on the money, whatever your insurance needs, home, automobile, or business. Visit their website, www.accentassurance.com, or you can call them at 514-363-3636. Also, Go all the way with Betway and get a free bet up to $200 if your first bet loses. Scan the QR code on the screen or click on the link in the details section to create an account and redeem your welcome offer. Offers only available for new customers. Terms and conditions apply. Offers not available in Ontario. You must be 18 years of age and over. And please play responsibly. All right. Okay. We talked about Mike Matheson. We're not going to talk much more about him. I think we said we had to say, but Nick Suzuki went to Mike Matheson's defense. Let's hear from the Montreal Canadiens captain.
I mean, I thought he had a good game, and then come home and my fiance is saying that people are saying, unfortunate things about Math, and I didn't like hearing that, and I thought, he plays the hardest minutes on our team against the toughest players, and defense is a position where mistakes get blown up out of proportion, and so he's been our top D for the whole season, and I think people are definitely being too hard on him.
All right, so we found something out there. As you mentioned, Mike Matheson is disengaged from social media, but Caitlin Fitzgerald, Nick Suzuki's fiance, definitely is not. So she's following and she's reading.
I wasn't in that scrum, so I that's the first time I'm hearing those comments. But I like them. I like them for two reasons. One, because Nick Suzuki is coming to the defense of his assistant captain and a guy who does everything for their team. That I like. The second is Nick Suzuki is level-headed enough to evaluate the game the way it needs to be evaluated. I don't think he's just... Listen, I've had conversations with Nick Suzuki where he admitted Slavkovsky wasn't playing the way he would expect him to play and the way Slavkovsky expects to play. He's pretty honest in his assessment. So I just think, we've said so much about this already. I don't want to add much more.
So here's
I hope for the people who really all they see is the mistakes when they watch Matheson, maybe they could tell themselves to watch the other parts of the game and try to balance out their own thoughts and figure out if it's just them or if it's at a certain point you have to be able to see it for what it is.
Well, once again, Mike Matheson has his great games. He's got his good games. He's got his not so good games. It just seems like sometimes people make it seem on social media like Mike Matheson is the worst defenseman on the Canadiens. I mean, let's be honest. Let's please stop. All right. Okay. He
needs to play more games where nobody has anything to say about him, good or bad.
Yeah.
Like those 5 games coming out of the break that he played where nobody talked about him. He needs a few more of those. That there's no debating, and Mike would probably be the first guy to tell you that.
Nick Suzuki on the team playing pressure games and how they have to deal with it and how they've been dealing with it.
For ourselves, we know we can be a good team, and we expect that out of ourselves. So, it's something that we want, and you want the pressure of being a good team, and teams having to be ready to play you. So, I think we've been better, and it's been a key to our success lately.
Okay. Speaking of Nick Suzuki, 50 points after 49 games. After 49 games since the 2018 season, how many Montreal Canadiens players, let me know, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, have had more points than 50 points in the first 49 games of the season?
Since what year?
Since 2018. Since 2009, 2010.
Mm-hmm.
Since 2009, 2010.
How many guys have had more than
50 points in the first 49 games? 1, 2, 3, or 4?
I'm going to say 1.
I tricked you.
Yeah, I'm going to say 0.
0. I tricked you.
Zero. Okay. I was really confused by the question, honestly.
All right. I don't know if you saw that, but Nick Suzuki, 50 points in 49 games. Thomas Plekanec back in 2009, 2010 with 47 points. In 2019, 2020, this may surprise you a little bit or surprise some. Tomas Tatar had 43 points. Yeah. And in 2018, 2019, Max Domi had 43 points.
Yeah, he finished with 72 that year.
Yes, he did.
Much better player then than, Look, man.
Ever
Nick
tell you my
Suzuki.
Domi story?
Go ahead.
So the Canadians acquire Max Domi in return for Alex Galchenyuk. And I don't have a problem with the player. I'd always liked the player, to tell you the truth. But I go on Twitter and I basically write a little bit of an odd deal. I mean, the Canadians are one of the lowest scoring teams in the National Hockey League. Why trade your 30-year-old goal scorer? And I think it's safe to say that a couple of years later, we realized that there were some big-time off-ice issues for Alex, which affected his game and affected his life. And we hope Alex is doing much better today. But, I basically just said, if you're one of the lowest scoring teams and you're going to make a trade, wouldn't it be better to go out and acquire a guy who's not coming off of back-to-back 9-goal seasons? Anyway, they make the trade. And obviously the trade works out amazing for the Canadians. He scores 28 goals and picks up 72 points.
Yeah.
But for the entire season now, once I've seen Max Domi play, like I am complimentary of Max Domi, like every game, every day. Wow, this guy's amazing. Wow, this was a steal for the Canadians.
He was great that year.
Wow. Anyway, I don't know how it happened, but one day I was searching for Max Domi or something on Twitter or whatever, and his account came up. So I'm searching for his name. His account comes up, and it says blocked. So
now you know how it feels, Tony.
So look, now I know how it feels. And you know what? I don't have a problem with it because, once again, like I've always said, you know what? You have the right to block someone on Twitter. So clearly he didn't like my comments the night of the trade. I was complimentary from his very first game to his very last that season. He had an amazing season, but he went and blocked me for.
Never got a chance to talk to him?
No, but that's okay.
Well, next time you see him, because I'm sure you will see him at one point.
Yeah.
You tell him this story, and I think he'll unblock you on X or whatever it'll be called in 5 years.
You think so? Really?
Yeah, I think if you told him that story, I don't
really care if he unblocks me. Like I know
you don't.
You know what I mean? So whatever.
Because you're a big man. You're a good man. You're a big
Thank you. I appreciate. Yes. Okay. David Reinbacher back at practice.
Yeah. Good news.
No contact. Monday, January 27. That's, if you remember the Reinbacher injury,
I do,
and the Liney injury.
Mm-hmm.
And now take a look at when Liney came back to play, which, if memory serves me well, was Tuesday, December 2nd. And take a look at when Reinbacher is back on the ice now, practicing with his teammates.
Mm-hmm.
In previous years, we talked about the fact that Canadians had so many injuries. But it just seems to me now, with the injuries that they do have, they get their guys back on the ice pretty quickly.
Yeah, it just seems they suddenly beat the timelines instead of constantly being later than what is actually announced. Now, Listen, we don't have an official word on when David Reinbacher will be back. We know that he was diagnosed with a 5 to 6 month recovery after knee surgery on October 1st. And right now, he's just short of 4 months getting back on the ice with his teammates. Now, I don't know if that means he'll play between now and the end of February. But if I was guessing, I think there's a pretty good chance he'll play between now and the end of February, especially with the way he looked in his first practice with the team and his first time skating with other players other than being on the ice with Adam Nicholas in 4 months after knee surgery. He looked really good. Like there was some clear rust there, timing-wise, whatever it is. But, I mean, he didn't look out of place on a team that's been pretty good for the last few months. It's great news for the kid. He's a great kid. Speaking of players taking shit on social media, the shit that he's taken since being drafted 5th overall has been uncalled for and absolutely obscene. And I know it's
too bad.
It really is from a minority of shit talking, louder than most people type of people. Okay. But the scouts that I speak to and the people that I speak to that evaluated Reinbacher's game before he got injured have all universally said the same thing about what this player is. And he does things at his age that you have to teach players through their first 4 years playing professional hockey. He still has room to grow in other areas of the game, and he was robbed of some very important development time this year with the injury that he suffered. But there will come a time when Canadiens fans truly appreciate David Reinbacher the way he should be appreciated. And I think that time is going to come sooner than most people anticipate, and especially sooner now that he's back on the ice with his teammates. It's great news for him. I'm happy for the kid. He's a good kid. The Canadiens have kept him involved. Juraj Slafkovsky said he's at every team dinner. The coaches have kept him in the meetings like they've done with all the players suffering long-term injuries recently. And he is a hard-working kid who shows up every day no matter what he's facing. And you should have seen him up and down those stairs in the press box with crutches for like 6 to 8 weeks that he was on those things. And he just never looked like he was complaining about anything. You know, like he's in good hands with this team. And it's impossible not to be happy for him to get back on the ice a month ahead of what could be his potential return. And if it's much sooner than that, kudos to the Canadian staff. And you're right, there is a pattern here. Players coming back sooner than we're expecting is a much better way of going than constantly saying it's going to be 6 to 8 weeks and then it takes 12. Like,
yeah. So a gentleman by the name of AKZ on YouTube says, so basically like Tony going off when we drafted him. Look, I'm not going to shy away from it, but I mean, obviously I'm not a Canadian scout. I'm not at the draft table. They have a lot more intel than I do. I would have liked to see the Montreal Canadiens draft Matvei Michkov, especially after so many scouts talked about the amount of talent that Michkov had. Everyone has an opinion whether or not Michkov wanted to be drafted by the Canadiens or whether or not Michkov was playing it so that he basically ended up in Philadelphia or whatever. Okay, but hold on a second. I was vocal that the Canadiens should have drafted Michkov instead of Reinbacher. I still feel that they should have, yada, yada, yada. But I didn't go on social media and tag David Reinbacher and give him shit because they drafted him basically on draft night. That I didn't do, but anyway. Maybe
listen,
it's not,
everybody's entitled to that opinion. By the way, Matvei Michkov has done a lot to undo some of the things that were said, for whoever was talking about all the talent that he had. There were many people talking to me about some of the issues that he had, his attitude.
Yeah.
The fact that a lot of his teammates didn't seem to appreciate that attitude. There were a lot of red flags around the player, not to mention what happened to him off the ice. And, not within his control. But, when you're playing in Russia and things happen off the ice, you suddenly and mysteriously lose your father. He was under contract for a while. Like, there were elements there that would scare enough teams into not going down that road. But I think his experience so far with the Flyers has undone some of the things that were said about him, or he's grown up and learned from those experiences. Because you talk to some of the players on Flyers, he's been a fantastic teammate. John Tortorella, who's a tough coach, has raved about the kid's attitude. And it's great to see what he's been able to do with his talent already at this age. He's going to be a star player in the NHL. And David Reinbacher is going to have a lot to prove that he could be a star player in the NHL also. But I think this kid has the potential to prove a lot of people wrong. And a lot of people got it wrong talking about what his ability is.
Look, I'll say this. I mean, I love Michkov, yes. But I will also say that there's been a lot of games this year for Philadelphia where he has also been like invisible. Like, here's a guy that a lot of people talk about being in contention for the Calder, and he is, along with Wolf and along with Lane Hudson, along with Macklin Celebrini and whatnot. But there's been a lot of games where, he was scratched for a couple of games. Tonight he played under 10 minutes.
He's a rookie.
Tortorella doesn't give him much ice time anymore.
He's not just a rookie, he's an 18-year-old rookie. Or maybe he's 19 now. I don't know. I haven't looked at his hockey DB recently.
Yeah.
The bottom line is they all go through it. Like, Lane Hudson is coming off 2 of the last 3 games where he just did not have his fastball. He didn't even have his changeup. In between, he played one of his best games of the season against the Rangers. He was phenomenal in that game. And he had 1 assist and finished -1. And I don't think that was representative at all of his performance. But he's a rookie. He's still a 20-year-old rookie who was playing a college schedule last year. Anyways, these kids are all amazing. The way they come into the league now, it's like the fact that they could play at this level at those ages and be trusted to play 22 and a half minutes a game like Hudson is, it's obscene.
Marty St. Louis talked about the communication. Let's hear from the Montreal Canadiens coach.
If they say on the bench to one another. A lot of it is constructive, and it's and they're very accurate with what they're seeing and what they're saying. The conversations we have as a group in the locker room, and when we ask questions, the answers are very clear. They know, they're well aware, and now it's maybe like getting more reps in practice to help the cues, so to speak. So, it's not something you can touch. It's something you can feel, and I know we have it.
There you have it, Marty St. Louis. It's not something you can touch. It's something you can feel, and I know we have it. Marty, optimistic about the Canadiens, saying, you know what, last 3 games haven't been our best games, but we still got 3 points in 3 games, and we'll see what happens tomorrow night versus Winnipeg Jets. What's your feeling?
He's learned a lot about this team, and so have we, right? I don't think any of us look at them, despite how well they played from November 15th or so onward up until the last 3 games where it slipped a little bit, and thought they were world beaters. I think we all saw a collective brand that started to develop, an identity that developed, that the Canadiens were able to give themselves better chances of winning games and came through more often than not. And I think when he looks at them now, despite seeing them not have their A game for the last 3 to 5, he still sees the same team. So do I. I think they have progressed to the level where they have earned that benefit of the doubt. Let's see how they deal with fatigue. Let's see how they deal with the pressure of the moment, which is enormous considering the race they're in and how little margin they have based on how they started the season. And we're going to find out more and more about this team. They are still one of the youngest teams in the league, despite Carrier coming in and changing the average age range and Line A being healthy. And they still have some things to learn about playing in these specific situations. But I think Arpin said it really well when he asked Marty about, and I think it was last week, he said, the goal was to play meaningful games in March, but is it fair to say that like the goal has already been accomplished because you've been in meaningful games for a while now? And Marty said, yeah, it feels like it's been over a month. We're in meaningful games. What they're getting right now is the healthiest thing for this rebuild, no matter what the outcome is from here to the end of the season. And if for whatever reason things slip to a point where they get ugly again and then they have to find their way back up a level, at least they've established a baseline here and a standard that they can try to reach. That to me is the value of this season. They have found what their baseline is that is at a certain standard and level that enables them to give themselves much better chances of winning games. And as they start to incorporate more of this young talent that is coming through their system, and they start to reach into different pockets of the NHL to fill the rest of their roster out as players come and go, that baseline and that standard is going to elevate. And they're going to be the team that Jeff Gordon and Kent Hughes hope they will be, which is a team that consistently is in the mix, not just for a playoff spot, but potentially for a Stanley Cup. And I don't know when it is, but those years are coming, I think.
I think so, too. You have a gut feel tomorrow night versus the Winnipeg Jets?
I don't have a gut feeling. I really don't. I have a gut feeling about these 7 games and think that 3-3-1 record is achievable. And if the Canadiens are a game better than that, great. And if they're a game worse than that, that's a sign of that's something to be concerned about. That's my feeling.
Who do you have replacing Alex Pietrangelo with Team Canada at the Four Nations tourney?
I think I saw Pierre LeBrun mention something about Drew Doughty being given a little bit of road to show that he can be the guy, and that Canada will take their time before naming a guy that takes over. I like his chances. I really like. I think if Drew Doughty is playing, Drew Doughty will play himself onto that team.
Yeah.
You lose a lot with Pietrangelo's experience. It's not just about talent and who the player is. Now,
for sure.
If Doughty comes back, Tony, and you could just tell he's behind the 8 ball.
Yeah.
But if you know Drew Doughty with the opportunity that's in front of him to prove that he belongs on that team and that it's not going to be a problem coming off the long-term injury that he suffered, the ankle injury, I wouldn't bet against him. Let's put it that way. And with his experience, that's a hard thing to keep off Team Canada considering the competition they have to be in.
I hear you. I was just hoping that you were going to say Mike Matheson. That's all, just for the benefit of the show.
Maybe Caden Gooley would have a pretty good chance at that considering the way he plays. But no, I don't know. Like, it's an interesting question. I mean, it's so crazy. Like if you had asked me to assemble that defense a year ago, like I wouldn't have envisioned Noah Dobson not being a part of it. And look at what's happened to him this season. He's struggled a lot. Like, I would, everyone talks about Nick Suzuki here in Montreal, and rightfully so. Like, if you had asked me during the playoffs if Wyatt Johnson was going to be on Team Canada, I would have said he's on one of the top 3 lines. Like, this country is overflowing with good talent, and I think a lot of people who are looking at the USA and saying they're locks to win this Four Nations tournament. And I don't know what people think.
Games played on the ice.
Games played on the ice.
Yeah,
and it's the same thing. Looking at the Canadian schedule, and we were talking about it last week. One team, Tampa Bay, coming off a back-to-back. I said that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter anymore. If you just watch the Canadians, go into Colorado on a back-to-back and win there based on their schedule of the 4 games prior, you could throw that shit out the window at this point. It just doesn't matter anymore.
Enjoy the hockey game tomorrow night. I'll talk to you again next week.
Yeah, you too.
Cheers, bud. There you have it. Eric Engels of Sportsnet at sportsnet.ca. Marinaro, guess who I'm going to be on with tomorrow night? Tomorrow night, I'm going to be joined by Pierre Maguire, who joins me weeknights after Montreal Canadiens hockey games for the Maguire Report, and regular collaborator on Tuesday nights, Maxime Lapierre. So, Marinaro playing left wing tomorrow night, Maguire at right wing, and our centerman is going to be Maxime Lapierre. Tomorrow night, 10 p.m., we'll be talking about the Canadiens and the Jets. Special thanks once again to all of our sponsors. Energy Transportation Group is one. Playground is another. Tibi is another. Betway is another. And Accent Insurance Solutions is the other. I think I said 6, but I think it's actually 5. All right. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's it. Speaking of 5, leave us a 5-star review on Apple. It's our way of feeling the love for Shane Gaumont and Master Control. I'll be back tomorrow night. Thanks for watching, everyone, on YouTube Live and on Facebook Live. I'm Marinaro.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Tony Marinaro on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. The Sick Podcast is brought to you by Energy Transportation Group, driven to be different. LaBita.tb. Embrace your true nature. And Playground, your premier gaming destination.